From our 22 News Broadcast Center, this is 22 News in Focus.
Good Sunday afternoon. Welcome to 22 News in Focus. I'm Ashley Afonso. Thanksgiving kicked off the year-end holiday season for most of us, and it's a time of joy and sharing with family and friends. But for others, it can be challenging. Unrealistic expectations, overcommitment, unhealthy eating, financial strain, and fatigue can cause people to become overwhelmed. Today on 22 News in Focus, we're talking about what you can do to help reduce the stress of the holiday whirlwind. For people recovering from drug or alcohol addiction, the holidays can be an especially trying time to maintain sobriety. And we're surrounded by alcohol at parties and in advertising. Sometimes holiday customs, bad childhood memories, and family gatherings that are associated with drug or alcohol use can make it hard to not use. Joining me today to talk about some strategies to help those struggling with substance abuse recovery are Sarah Kendall, Vice President of Clinical Operations for the Mental Health Association, and Mark Yacom, Recovery Coach at the Mental Health Association. Thank you both for being here with us today.
Thanks for having us.
So first of all, just tell me a little bit about each of yourselves and how you became involved with this association.
Absolutely. Kind of earlier on in my life, I became very interested in working with people. I had some personal experiences of seeing folks struggling with different stressors, whether it be anxiety, depression, or substance use, but having more so the opportunity to get beyond some of those things. And I think seeing folks have the opportunity to persevere really gave me the interest in working with people and to learn more about that. So I've kind of channeled that into my education and the opportunity to work with folks in any way that I could.
And yourself, Mark?
I have lived experience. I'm in recovery over 3.5 years from alcohol. I've had a lot of people in my life that were very supportive of me when I was going through all my struggling times. My family, my girlfriend, people I didn't even know, complete strangers that were actually, pretty pivotal in me getting into recovery. And I think it was pretty much time that I needed to give back to the community and to those who might not have the support. So that's what got me here.
Okay, before we get into talking about the holidays, can you just tell us a little bit about the work you guys do?
Sure. I'm newer in my position. I've been with MHA, Mental Health Association, for a couple of weeks. Currently in my role, I'll have the opportunity to have responsibility and clinical oversight for the agency. We're starting a new clinic come the new year, so that's very exciting. But I'll have the chance to also work clinically with all of the services that we provide. So general overview.
Okay, and Mark, how about the work you do?
The people I work with are either looking to get into recovery or are very new to recovery, so I can help them find a pathway best suited to them, which basically there's 50 different pathways to recovery. Some will work better for others. My job basically is to give them guidance and some structure.
Okay, so the holidays are supposed to be this very special time of the year, but it can be super stressful. What are some of the triggers for people who are in recovery?
Well, I think just as you said, I think oftentimes as a society and individually, we have expectations, right? That the holidays are supposed to be. They, are supposed to be exciting. They're supposed to be joyful. And for a lot of individuals, that's not their experience. I think coming upon the holiday season or being halfway through the holiday season, the experience, for a lot of folks is that they may be, not in good connection or establishment with their family. And so they may not have been invited to the Thanksgiving dinner with their family, a couple of days ago. And so that's not something that, that could be, a trigger for the upcoming holidays that we have around the corner. And I think that's a really good example. So some of just the basic expectations that we see all around us, in commercials and the shopping centers and such.
So what are some strategies you can put into place to try and set yourself up for success during the holiday season?
You can focus on just staying positive, being around people that are a positive support network. Whether you're in a 12-step program, staying in touch with a sponsor, therapist, family, and basically just discussing how you're feeling with people. If you're keeping things in, that's not going to lead to a good outcome. So whenever something is bothering you or, on your mind, just talk to somebody about it. That's the best advice I can give. Just talk, be open.
And do you find it hard around this time of year to maybe engage in some of the social gatherings? Do people in recovery find it hard because they don't want to go down a bad path, but they also want to stay in touch with family and friends?
With me, I have a good support network, not necessarily that way with everybody. So, certain people, places, or things you might want to stay away from. Places you maybe used to go on the night before Christmas Eve or whatever, with all your friends and family, stay away from those type of situations. If you're in a situation where you're uncomfortable, just say so. Tell somebody. Have a support now. Go with somebody who's in sobriety or in recovery, and use them as a tool.
I think what can also be helpful is finding the opportunity to make new traditions. Identifying new supports that you may have in your life this year that maybe you haven't had in years past, and being planful in advance. Creating, an event to have a holiday dinner or gathering with those folks versus with folks that you're not in touch with anymore, and being mindful in advance. Those kinds of few simple things that you can do mindfully can be tremendously helpful and effective.
So a lot of these parties are centered around alcohol, and for someone in recovery, that can be very challenging. What can someone hosting do to help people?
Well, I think, again, having the opportunity to have any kind of planful or advanced communication is very, very helpful. Having the opportunity, if it's a family member, having a conversation in advance, letting them know that you may, make an appearance at that gathering, but it may not be early, and you may not stay the length of the gathering. You may only, stay for a little bit, and just, letting them know what your intentions are. My intention may not be to change the full gathering, but it's only the expectation that I have as the attendee. I don't think the expectation can be to change the event that you're attending, but to have a conversation with the host can be tremendously helpful.
Working one-on-one with people, do you find that this time of the year is one of the most, if not the most challenging?
So far, it seems that way. Every day is a struggle, but when it comes to the holidays, everybody sees the commercials on TV for, you name it, every kind of alcohol, and they're all happy commercials and supposed to be fun times. That's not necessarily the way things really are. A lot of people do have some guilt and shame that they have for feelings pertaining to some things they may have done during the holidays, and a lot of times it's a trigger, and it brings up a lot of bad memories, and people don't know how to handle them the right way, which can in turn lead to a relapse of some kind. And the best thing that you want to do is just, again, I can't stress enough to just be open and talk to people with whatever you're feeling. If you're having a trigger or something is bothering you, just talk about it.
Okay, let's talk maybe about an exit plan or something along those lines. If you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, what should you do?
Giving yourself permission. Giving yourself permission to know in advance that you can leave at any point in time. Some of the things that we can recommend to folks are where you park can be key and pivotal. Try to park at a place that you don't think that you'll be boxed in, so nobody will park behind you, that it'll be easy for you to exit, and knowing that it's okay to exit. You can always say, as a follow-up to folks later on, you don't have to necessarily make, a big to-do about saying goodbye to everyone. If you don't have a chance, if you're uncomfortable, you can simply know it's okay to go. And the next day you can follow up and say, thank you for having me. Having somebody to follow up with, a place to go, whether it be maybe a meeting in the area, if it's not a typical meeting that you go to, if meetings are something that you find to be helpful, or somebody to follow up with on that drive home, or someplace else to go that's enjoyable to you, something that you find peaceful, or something that will make you smile, going to a movie, any of those kinds of things that you can plan to do and that are enjoyable and okay. Giving yourself permission, I think, is key.
And what are some of the responses people can have ready if they're feeling pressure from a large group setting?
You just say no. If somebody offers you a drink or another substance and you don't want it, it's okay to say no. Nancy Reagan said it years ago, just say no, and that still stands firm and true right now. So if you want to just say no, that's fine. You shouldn't have to explain yourself as to why you don't want something. And if people are trying to force you into having something, it's probably not the group of people you really want to be with to begin with.
All right, we'll continue this conversation after a short break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about surviving the stress that can come along with the holidays. For those who are struggling with substance abuse and other addictions, this time of the year can be especially trying. So lots of people belong to 12-step programs or other programs to help them deal with addictions. Should they attend more meetings when we get around this time of year to stay on track?
Absolutely, that can be very, very helpful. Actually, a lot of 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous oftentimes will host additional meetings. They almost do celebrations around these time of year, so folks can bring food and enjoy and break bread together, and so it becomes something that's enjoyable, as well as the additional support. It's definitely felt as a gathering as well.
All right, and what are some ways, you kind of touched on this before, but people in recovery can start to create these new traditions and maybe look for a different group of people that doesn't remind them of their old habits?
Well, I think new traditions can look very different, for that person, and knowing that that's okay. So whoever those folks may be in your life, your close, support network, it could be folks in your community, in your fellowship, whoever those folks are. Making that time to come together, having a meal together, going to a place together, maybe a banquet hall if there are enough of you, and that being a tradition, something you do on a regular basis. Everyone brings that unique dish that they make, brings music that they grew up with or something that's special to them, and it becomes something that is their new tradition and is enjoyable and is very different than was the tradition that they grew up with, but is something that is new and precious.
And for these different parties that people will attend, is this something you suggest people kind of maybe bring their own beverage if it's alcohol that they have a bad habit with?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with bringing your own, whether it's seltzer, water, soda, anything. Most people feel, I know for myself, I like to be someplace with a water bottle in my hand. I don't know why, it's just a comfort thing. So that's something that you can do, and that way you have your own and you don't have to worry about people offering you things. And still, again, if they do, you just say, no, I'm good, thank you, I have my own.
And they make all these Christmassy seltzer waters now, so you can still be in the holiday spirit, right?
Exactly.
How much do you think that commercials and different forms of advertising are glamorizing drinking?
I believe that, every commercial that you see is either funny, a beautiful scenery, family getting together, having fun, raising a glass of wine or something like that, and they're attractive, but they're not showing the other side of what reality is of, families arguing, fights, OUIs, you name it. The worst case scenarios, bad car accidents, people lose their lives, things like that. They don't show that. I wonder if they did, what people would actually think of and how the reaction would be, because it's just way too glamorous, in my opinion.
So what do you think needs to be done to change that perception that there's only a good side to this?
Go ahead.
Well, I think that there are a lot of ways that advertisement around holidays could be maybe more balanced. Could maybe focus just more time on being together and what that could look like and could mean, without it just being as much of a focus. I think statistically or percentage-wise, maybe just more of a balance would be key. But I think also, providing opportunities around treatment opportunities and treatment options. I think we've done a lot better with the opioid crisis, sharing messages of import, and I think increasing opportunities around treatment have definitely improved, and I think we can do much more of that on a larger scale around substance use, alcoholism, and treatment opportunities for such at this time of year. I think it just provides a balance.
And people might have grown up watching their parents have eggnog or whatever the tradition is. How do parents be aware of the message that they're sending to their children around this time of year?
Be responsible. If children are seeing you have a few drinks and getting intoxicated, buzzed, whatever you want to call it, and then jumping in the car and running to the store or bringing somebody home, they're not getting the right message that you're not being responsible. You're showing them that it's okay to have a few drinks, get in the car, and drive around, which is, we all know that's not a good thing and it's not right. So, you know, just to send the right message and show them, be responsible. We can have fun with this, but there comes a boundary that we don't cross.
How important is it to set a game plan going into, I mean, we've passed Thanksgiving now, so going into the rest of the holiday season, and how do you go about doing that?
Well, I think, again, being mindful, knowing who your supports are, if you're not quite positive, thinking about that, and maybe even writing that down, communicating with people in advance, exchanging numbers. You know, one of the things that's also helpful is being a support to other folks. If you are in recovery, it's not so much just who is helpful for you to call, but who are you available for folks that can call you as well, because it's the sharing and being part of a support network that's so critical. And so having those conversations in advance, conversations with family, if you will attend or won't attend, having that in advance, setting boundaries around what we will and won't discuss, right? If there are some discussions that come up every year that kind of end negatively, maybe we can agree not to discuss those at the holiday dinner table this year over Christmas, you know? And just trying to be mindful and having that conversation up front before can be helpful.
For someone who still wants to celebrate but might be looking for a new group of people to celebrate the holidays with, are there different events that happen throughout this season that people can go to that are alcohol-free, drug-free, a comfortable environment?
Yeah, I know for myself, being in a 12-step program, that AA has an alcothon every year, different locations. It's 24 hours. I believe it usually starts around 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve and goes until Christmas Day, noontime or whatever, or not 6 to 6. So you have a meeting every hour. You have food, you have people to talk to, you have a safe place to go. That's just one example of things to do. And plus, if you want, just find your sober friends or friends in recovery and get together and do your own thing. Go to a movie, go out to dinner, you know, go watch a football game or something. You can make things happen.
So we make it through Christmas and those holidays, but New Year's Eve is really the holiday that seems to be centered around drinking. What is a plan you can put in place for that holiday and some alternatives? So
again, thinking about what are those things that you enjoy, and knowing, you know, some folks will think, you know, I only stay up for midnight for this. That was the only reason I stayed up that late, so I'm not going to force myself to do that this year. I'm going to get a good night's rest, and that's good if that works for you. Or maybe going to a midnight showing of a movie. Some, you know, theaters will show classic pictures that are very enjoyable for folks. There are a number of activities, you know, folks may enjoy going, you know, with a full group to see the ball drop, and they go with a safe, supported network, and they don't have to, you know, be involved in drinking or any other substance use, because they're with a safe, supported group network.
What are some strategies you've been able to help people that you deal with on a daily basis make it through this time of year?
We talk. You know, if they have plans of things that they would like to do but they're nervous about doing for fear of a trigger, we discuss it. I will talk to them if they have a sober network, which most do. I will tell them, you know, go out with them, go and drive out to Boston and see, you know, whatever they do in Boston for Christmas Eve. Have some fun, but just make sure that you're very open about everything. I can't stress that enough. I really can't. Is just talk about everything that you're going through, what you're feeling, and if you're uncomfortable with a situation, just say so. If you don't think, you know, once something starts and you don't feel that this is the right place for you to be, just say so and do something different. And, you know, a designated driver. Me, myself, all my friends know I'm available anytime to be a designated driver. It's fine by me. I don't drink anymore, so why not? Why wouldn't you call me or have somebody that doesn't drink be your responsible person? And you can, you know, the people that do drink can still have their fun while you can have fun and do things too.
Still be involved.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, the holidays aren't a time of joy for everyone. We'll learn about dealing with depression. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about surviving the stress that the holidays can bring. For most of us, the holidays are a season of cheer and merriment, but a time for reconnecting with loved ones, celebrating the coming of the new year, and taking a break from the demands of everyday life. But for others, the holidays can be a period of emotional highs and lows. Loneliness, anxiety, happiness, and sadness are common feelings sometimes experienced by triggering a bad memory. The good news is the blues can be remedied by planning ahead. Joining me now to talk about addressing anxiety and depression and dealing with a toxic family dynamic during the holidays are Sarah Kendall, Vice President of Clinical Operations for the Mental Health Association, Caitlin Drown, Clinical Case Manager at the Mental Health Association, and Jessica Jacobs, Lead Clinical Case Coordinator for the Mental Health Association. So first of all, why do the blues hit during this season? What is it about this happy time that can make people see the lowest of low points?
Well, I think that it can be a number of things. To start, the weather's changing. You're not maybe getting outside as much or enough sunlight or exercise throughout the day. But also I think that it can bring up a lot of memories for people, some not so great memories, which can really impact your mood.
So how does someone going into this time of year plan for this?
Being aware of what your activity schedule looks like, and quite honestly being aware of your own expectations about what things will look like. We're human. We all have really excited, I think, expectations of like tonight it's going to be a great night, or the holidays are going to be really exciting, and sometimes they don't quite meet our expectations. And so being okay with maybe reshifting our focus or starting new traditions or accepting things for what they are in the moment.
For someone who maybe lost a loved one sometime in 2018 and is now coming to the holidays for the first time without that loved one, how do you approach that and keep traditions going?
I think it can be, finding a way to remember that person in a way that will still let you be able to enjoy the holidays is really important. And that can be in a number of ways, either, having a photo of them and talking about some happy memories that you had with that person, but also trying not to go too deep into the hard feelings of having that loss.
How important is it to take care of yourself during this time of year, and what are some of the practices you can do?
Oh, it's incredibly pivotal. I think at this time of year, it's very easy to do just the opposite. It can be easy to get off our balance and to throw ourselves into shopping, committing ourselves to a number of different activities, volunteering at our children's school, whereas we really want to be mindful about balance, keeping with our sleep routine, eating well, and keeping with our physical activity. It's absolutely important. Trying to avoid things like fatigue that could make us much more vulnerable to being much more sensitive, but also our brain becomes fatigued, which makes us much more vulnerable emotionally.
People are trying to fit in more. They're trying to maybe shop for others and prepare for all of these gatherings. What are some of the steps you can take to really break it down for yourself and stay healthy and keep up your routines?
I know a number of folks have actually kind of switched to doing certain gift swaps with designated individuals, and so as opposed to trying to buy for an entire family and in-laws and second cousins, right? Instead, it's more of, I have this person, they have me, and so it's a much more manageable task. And I know sometimes talking about shopping as a task is a bit of a Grinch move, but it is just the facts of we only have so much time. People still have to work, people have to travel, and so making your to-do list more manageable and also altering your expectations to fit that. And so you might work out for 2 hours during the week in the summer. However, if you have all these obligations, that might not be realistic. And so changing your expectation to a walk a day as opposed to maybe hitting the gym 4 days in a row, and knowing that that's okay to modify your schedule to meet what your needs are currently.
How do you address these obligations and expectations with family members and other loved ones so they know what you are bringing to the table?
I think as we're trying to be more mindful of making more balanced expectations of the season for ourselves, it's also, critical to share those expectations with our family, to let them know that, where we may have been very quick to jump into trying to do everything before in years past, we're going to try something different this year, and so to vocalize that. As an example of doing like a gift swap, having those conversations and saying, this may be something that will make it a little bit easier for me this year. Would that also work for you? I think sharing those expectations can really help change the dynamic of what the family does expect from us.
So in a way, you have to be an advocate for yourself, really, even with your own family, and not in an aggressive way, but to get you through this, right? Again, talking.
Right, and being transparent. So like Sarah said, setting different expectations, but letting people know this is what I can commit to. And so giving yourself permission to limit your own energy expenditure, it can in turn give other folks permission to do that. And so I think a lot of us are experiencing stress the holiday season, and sometimes it just is nice to know that you're not the only person who is worried about maybe you're losing hair. I don't know, right? You're feeling very stressed. So
there's also a big burnout factor this time of year from people trying to do so much. So how do you prevent yourself from going down that path?
I think it can be difficult for people because they want to, show that they care about other people, and maybe they want to buy these gifts and do everything that others are asking of them. So it's really important to know your own boundaries and know your own limits, and just be okay with saying no if something is too much.
And how about the fact that there's so much overindulgence? It doesn't even have to be alcohol. It could just be food or whatever it is. How do you set yourself up to stay on the right track for that?
I think part of it is being aware. Constantly checking in with yourself is absolutely critical. It can be very easy, after the New Year's to say, oh, look at what I've done. I let things go over the last week, and, over the last week, you've had 2 significant holidays, and a lot could have happened, as we know. I mean, statistically, there's a reason that, memberships to health club increase. That is a statistical time of year where individuals actually do have a weight increase. So there are ways that we can check in with ourselves and make a point to do that. Maybe even share that with a partner, that, on Wednesday, let's check in with ourselves after Christmas and then see where we are on Friday, and just, check in with each other and be buddies with that.
For someone struggling with depression that might now be in a good place, but going into the holidays, they definitely feel like this could trigger something. How do you approach that and try and stay in a good path?
Well, being prepared. So there are service providers out there, and seeking professional help is absolutely a benefit, and there's no shame in asking for help. And so just like there are times where you need more support, if the holidays are traditionally a time where you struggle, reaching out and seeing a therapist ongoing, and maybe having extra sessions leading up to whether you travel or family comes in, knowing that these are some triggers for me, and it can be really tough to navigate this time of year.
Do you find that people throughout other times of the year who don't necessarily struggle so much with depression or anxiety find themselves caught up at least with anxiety from having to do so much?
Definitely, especially if it kind of goes back to self-care. So if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally, that really plays a big factor into your anxiety level and stress level throughout the holidays. And so I just think it's really important to remind yourself to kind of take a step back and just be in the here and now and focus on what you need.
All right, we'll continue this conversation after a short break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Welcome back to 22 News in Focus. Today we're talking about dealing with the stress that the holidays can bring. Most holiday memories bring images of family harmony and good times, but for some, the images we see in advertising do not represent our lives or family dynamics and can make people dread dealing with family. For some families, the holidays can be one of the most stressful times of the year, leading to conflict and year-old resentments. So first of all, let's talk about the things we see in advertising. They paint the picture of the perfect family and perfect table, perfect food. How do you realize that that's not a realistic expectation?
We're inundated with pictures of perfection everywhere we look. Magazines, commercials, even radio ads have, the voiceover of people laughing and enjoying. And I don't know if I've ever walked in and my home looks like that, right? And so kind of knowing that there is this affected perfection, and knowing that it's okay to not live up to a spread from a magazine, and it's really more about the folks in the room, and maybe not the perfect centerpiece.
So how can you, if you have a family dynamic that you know is going to be a trigger, how do you approach this?
I think having the opportunity, if possible, to acknowledge that before you actually are together is key. Whether it be, it may be that there is a sibling rivalry that has always existed and just happens to be the topic of discussion over dinner. Maybe having a discussion with a family member ahead of time to say, let's just try to keep it civil. Let's just try not to do that at Christmas this year. We can do it, any other time. But I think also having the opportunity to identify that outside of the holidays may give you a chance to work on it, maybe actually resolve it outside of such a stressful, high expectation driven time of year. So there's much, better potential. But I think having the opportunity to do something in advance to avoid that from happening is a key.
And also realizing that you can do your part of the work, right? And so if there's a certain interaction that it keys you up or triggers you or makes you feel really anxious or depressed, then working on that ongoing prior to the holidays and preparing that, in fact, that situation might happen. And even if you try to have that conversation, it might still happen. And so being aware of ways that you can cope and deal with the fallout of whatever happens, because I think a big piece that leads to stress and anxiety around the holidays is trying to control everything. And the truth is we can only control our part in things. And so realizing that and preparing for coping skills and identifying the triggers and how you feel prior is what I think can help you be successful in those moments.
What if the stress comes surrounded around a particular person that you really don't have control over, whether it be an in-law or a cousin or someone that has to be there? How do you approach that? The same way you would approach the different dynamics?
I think the transparency piece is really important, because as much as we wish, sometimes certain things just do not go how we want them to. And so kind of like the expectations around having a perfect centerpiece, families are messy and they're not always perfect, and so that dynamic just if it's been tense for years, it's not going to magically change because it's Christmas or because it's a different holiday. It's going to still be stressful. And so the idea of having a conversation and being clear and I don't want to fight or I don't want this to happen, I just want to enjoy the holidays with you and see how it works out.
I also don't think that has to be the defining factor either. So if there's an argument or an incident or whatever it is on the holidays, that doesn't have to define your entire holiday. You can kind of have the moment happen and then move past it.
There definitely seems to be a keeping up with the Joneses even more this time of year, right? You have to buy the gifts and have the food. How do you manage that and not stress yourself out over it?
It goes back to setting realistic expectations, and if you can't provide the entire holiday meal, try something new, implement a different tradition, maybe do like a potluck type style dinner, something to that extent, or maybe just appetizers or just dessert, something like that.
For people who maybe can't afford gifts for everyone, how do you approach that situation delicately?
Well, I think, as was mentioned earlier, I think a lot of times you are hearing more now that folks are doing more of an identified individual gift swap where, larger families, or where it is something that's economical for folks that are able to identify one person, that's who I'll buy for this year. And so everyone has the opportunity to focus on buying a gift for one person rather than having to buy for 5 to 15 to all of those family members, because it's something that is affordable this year.
How can people deal with bad behavior from other people's children? Maybe it's their brother or sister's child, not your place to discipline. How do you deal with that?
I think you have to set the boundaries of yourself, right? And so the thing that was touched on earlier is you have permission to leave a setting. You have permission to leave a room. So if there's a tantrum happening and it is just really pounding in your ears, maybe taking that time to take a walk in the neighborhood or go into the other room, and just giving some distance, because again, I think that can often lead to more stressful situations when people think other family members overstep.
If an argument does begin and it's really getting heated at this point, how do you kind of give yourself the exit plan going maybe before this even happens, knowing this could happen? What's the strategy you should come up with?
I think it's important to recognize that if somebody else is mad, it's not necessarily because of you, and you're not the cause of it, and so not taking responsibility for their feelings. And I think that can make it easier to manage a situation. But if it does become too much for you, and you get to a place where you might react in a way that you don't want to, I think having like an exit strategy or being able to go into a different room just takes some space.
Okay, we talked about commercials for adults and the anxiety that can cause for them, but children are also seeing this. How do you set realistic expectations for your child?
I think it's important to be able to communicate with your child in the language that they'll understand. And also, it can be helpful to prepare them ahead of time of just different scenarios. But you also can't control everything, so things might happen, and so it's important to be able to communicate that with them after the fact in language that they'll understand in a way that they can move forward from that.
And that seems to be one of the biggest stressors for maybe parents who can't afford to provide for their child on this holiday. There obviously are many outlets you can go to, Toys for Tots and that kind of thing, but is there a way to explain to your child without ruining the magic of this time of year?
Again, the clear transparency of the situation. There might be a little less this year, or also switching a gear, kind of, and focusing on a gift, maybe like them picking out a gift to donate, and saying there are other folks that are really struggling too, and other kids your age that don't wake up to a room full of gifts. And so what if we went and picked out a gift, and kind of really helping them to see and experience that positive feeling of providing for others, and the generosity that kind of is so present in the holiday season.
Still giving them the spirit of the holidays, right? All right, how to make your holidays a positive and joyous experience. We'll learn ways to create new traditions to make you happy when we return. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about surviving the stress that the holidays can bring. We've discussed triggers that can make people express themselves negatively and create conflict. But for most of us, the holidays are exciting and a joyful time. And for those who struggle, there are options. So what are some of the ways that we can celebrate and create new rituals and in a positive way, with a positive mindset?
I think, as we were just talking about with children, sometimes things are born out of economical need, but can also be another way to focus on the spirit of the year and the spirit of the holidays is, rather than something having to be something we see on a commercial and then this is what I want and will be wrapped under the tree, the opportunity to be together. And what that can mean, taking the opportunity to walk around a neighborhood where there are lights, and to be outside and to breathe in the fresh air, to play in the snow, those kinds of new opportunities and new traditions, making crafts, things that we can make and bake together, and then give those to family. Bring those with us as gifts to our neighbors, and then see the expression on their face when they receive those things that we've spent our time sharing.
And what about volunteering? There's lots of opportunity to volunteer. How do you start looking for those and get family and friends involved?
There are many opportunities in the community. And so often there are dinners that you can serve and be at. And while certain traditions are really near and dear to our hearts, and there's nothing wrong with that, being open though to, because families grow and new members come in, significant others, children are born, and so being open to different cultural influences is a huge piece of just kind of melding all of the traditions together. And so if one night there's volunteering and then another night maybe there's a ceremony with friends and family from a different culture, being open to that, because again, I think with the pictures we're receiving via media of all sorts, it is sometimes a narrow lens, and so knowing that there's so many more opportunities and ways to spend our holiday season.
And I think there definitely is a stress that goes along with carrying on traditions. So how do people accept the fact that it's okay to not do this year after year?
It's not always easy, right? Some traditions die hard, and so also knowing and honoring people's wishes around that, right? And so it doesn't have to be a holiday overhaul. It could be just a small piece. And so knowing that maybe this holiday won't be completely different, but we're going to incorporate something else. And so it can kind of be an evolution over the years and something that you look forward to as a family of like, what can we incorporate this year as well?
So as people are starting to make plans for Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever they are celebrating, how can you openly, we've talked so much about how important communicating is. What are some of the things you need to say to your family members to set yourselves up for success going into this big day?
I was just say have a conversation about what's important to them and to yourself as well, and how can we bring different ideas into our holiday experience. And if you have people from different religions or backgrounds, they have their own traditions, and so asking them what's one thing that maybe they do for the holiday, and see if you can do a little bit of everything, right? Not to add too much pressure, but to see kind of how you can incorporate everything together.
How about a gratitude journal? Is now really the time of year to start this? Explain to people who don't know what that is as well.
Yeah.
You want this one or me?
Okay, go ahead.
So gratitude journal can be a number of things. So it can actually be a physical journal, or there's actually apps for gratitude journals as well. And you really want to just make it your own. It's a chance to maybe either once a week, once a day, to just think about all of the positive things that are going on in your life, and what you're thankful for, what you're grateful for, and just being able to jot those down and just really focus on those for that moment. And there's also different prompts that you can follow. People make lists. There's just a number of things that you can do with it.
So after all the stress, there definitely is a happiness that comes along with this time of year. How do you keep that spirit going all year long and give joy to other people, right? Pass it along.
Well, I think that the gratitude journal is actually really good to do throughout the year, because then you're reminded of all the positive things in your life moving forward, and you can kind of exude that into your daily routine and with other people that you speak with, and also just taking a moment in your day to really just appreciate what's going on around you. And I think that can happen any time of year.
It might sound cliche, but also just enjoying the little moments, right? And so again, sometimes we think, well, for things to be really good, they have to be on a whole different level, a really fantastic moment. And sometimes it's just sharing a smile with a stranger, or someone that they're out running errands too, right? And so those little things that just give you a minute of happiness or peace, acknowledging them, right? So not running so fast that it was like, well, that was nice, but, right? But, sitting there in the moment and saying like, it was really nice to be able to just see this person and check in for a minute.
If someone finds themselves completely overwhelmed by the anxiety or depression, what are the steps you need to take to make sure you stay healthy?
Well, I think in those moments where they're feeling very overwhelmed, it's absolutely key that they have some supports in place that they know that they can reach out to. As was stated, that there are treatment options available if folks have those connections, making sure that they know how to reach out to them in those times. There are emergency service providers available as well, supports that can help connect people to something, whether it's emergency, more of a crisis line, or even a peer support line that they can connect with somebody on an emergent basis. Those are absolutely key. Having somebody in their personal life that they can connect with as well, knowing themselves and who they could connect with in those times is very, very important.
And it seems like a lot of people, especially women and moms, just say to themselves, I have to just get through this time of year, get through the holidays, and then I can focus on myself. But that's not the case, is it? You need to get help when you need it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes things as little as when you're feeling, right? Because a lot of times there's a physiological response. You feel like you're going to explode, or your heart is pounding really fast. And if you start to notice that, taking some mindful steps to slow down. And so maybe stopping where you are, maybe grounding yourself, putting your feet on the floor and taking a few deep breaths. Because again, it's going to slow your body down. And when our hearts are racing and our minds are racing, it's really difficult to take care of ourselves and honestly anyone else. And so in those moments where you catch yourself, just taking a few deep breaths can really help too.
Thank you all for all this great advice. We'll have the last word for you after the break. Stay with us. You're watching 22 News in Focus. You're watching 22 News in Focus. Today we've been talking about coping strategies for stress during the holidays. Keep in mind that the holidays are supposed to be a joyful time and an opportunity to spend quality time with the people you love. That's our program for today. We want to thank our guests for joining us and thank you at home for watching. If you missed any of it, you can watch it in full on our website, wwlp.com. From all of us here at 22 News, we wish you a wonderful Sunday and a wonderful holiday season.